Welcome to Joe Stunner Boxing. I made a video earlier today about the little disagreement between Roy Jones Jr. and Floyd Mayweather Jr. This stems from the fact that Jones has said he thinks Jones said he thinks Floyd would lose to a prime Sugar Ray Leonard. Floyd, a very narcissistic individual, didn't like this. Anything perceived as criticism, he's not having that. So he got stuck into Roy posting footage of Roy being knocked out by Antonio Tarver and Glenn Johnson and others. And then Roy clapped back, and around and around we went. And Roy said, look, I just gave an opinion. I happen to think a prime Ray Leonard would beat Floyd. Okay. But one of the things that really caught my eye when I was reading Roy's quotes is that he says Manny Pacquiao had a better career than Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, a lot of people will say, what the hell are you talking about? Floyd was 50 wins, no draws, no defeats. He had 27 KOs. Manny, he recently came back after 4 years out, got a draw, got a straight shot at Mario Barrios' WBC welterweight title, and got a draw, majority draw, which a lot of people think he should have won that fight. I got to be honest, I watched it, I thought he edged it, but it was surreal watching Pacquiao, roll back the years. And Barrios is not the greatest welterweight champion that has ever been, but and in fact, the one judge that went for a winner, because it was a majority draw, two of the guys had it 114, but the other one went for Barrios, and Barrios was doing some good work. I mean, people say Pacquiao looked as flashy as he always looked. Yeah, and it definitely was an impressive performance by Pacquiao. But without in any shape or form comparing Mario Barrios to Marvin Hagler, this did have the air of that Hagler-Leonard contest, where I thought Hagler won the fight without looking particularly impressive. But I think people were dazzled by the fact that Ray Leonard looked so impressive after being out, but he had one fight in 5 years prior to fighting Hagler. I think people were leaning towards Pacquiao because they were so astounded that he'd been out for 4 years, and his last fight prior to that he lost to Yordenis Ugas widely, unanimous decision. It was a comfortable defeat anyway in favour of Ugas. So for him to come back and get a straight shot at the title and get the draw, in a sense, it is the proverbial moral victory. But nevertheless, getting back to the issue, who had the better career, you've got a guy with 8 defeats on his record, 3 stoppages. He's also got 3 draws. That was the Barrios decision, was his 3rd draw. And we know that Pacquiao was flattened by Juan Manuel Marquez in their 4th fight. He just got knocked cold. He got stopped twice earlier on in his career when he was down at, I don't know what it was. What was it? Light flyweight, something like that. He got knocked out in 3 rounds. Let's go back to 1996, maybe. And, you've got to ask the question, well, he's getting knocked out at flyweight. How the hell is he going up all those divisions and becoming a long-established welterweight world champion and beating up people like, not like Miguel Cotto, for example, who's a tremendous technician, and stopping him? The shadow that hangs over Pacquiao for me in terms of possible PED use is quite overwhelming for me. He's not the only one, of course. Lest we forget that Roy Jones himself failed a PED test. Juan Manuel Marquez, who we mentioned a moment ago, he's another one. I'd be stunned if he wasn't juicing at some point in his career. You look at the Juan Manuel Marquez who fought Floyd Mayweather and got knocked down and toyed with. Look at the physique of that guy compared to the welterweight who knocked out Pacquiao. I think it's, yeah. Anyway, ignoring the whole PED issue, people will assume that Floyd Mayweather Jr. had the better career because he retired undefeated. And as I've said many, many times before, I'm not remotely interested in being undefeated unless there is substance to your resume. So Rocky Marciano, Joe Calzaghe, uh, Ricardo Lopez Jr., and Floyd. Yeah, okay, we can. It's a great achievement, fighting that quality of opposition and going undefeated. If you're Sven Otka, if you're Terry Marsh, if a few others who retired undefeated, Horace Notice retired undefeated, for Christ's sake, the British heavyweight from the 80s. It depends what the substance is behind your resume, whether that zero in the losses column matters. And of course, as I said in my previous video, Sugar Ray Robinson, who was widely considered by a lot of people to be the greatest fighter ever, he ended up with 19 losses on his record, and no one gives a damn, nor should they, because sometimes you fight for way, way too long, like Roy Jones, who has 10 losses on his record. You fight too long, you lose to guys who you would have stood on their head in a round. That's just the way it goes. You fight on for too long. If Floyd had carried on fighting, he'd have losses on his record, But Floyd navigated his career in a very crafty way. Some might say, he picked people at the right time when they were on the wane, or when they'd just been defeated, like when he fought Pacquiao. Marquez had knocked him out. So you could make that argument. But here's why I think the argument that Pacquiao had a better career than Mayweather. Here's why I think you can make a strong argument for that, and it's got nothing to do with who they fought and losses and draws and undefeated records. All right, Manny Pacquiao started at light flyweight. Okay, he turned pro in the 1990s. All right, so he turned pro. What did he turn pro? 1995, 1996. I think it was 95, 96, mid 90s anyway. Okay, and he was a light flyweight. All right. And yet he went on to dominate at welterweight. He even won a super welterweight belt when he beat up Margarito, who was a much, much bigger man. And even allowing for the PED thing, okay, I get it. I keep getting back to it. But even allowing for that. Can you imagine if Naoya Inoue, who himself started at light fly, went all the way to welterweight and dominated at welterweight for many, many years, and then fought Boots Ennis and lost, but gave Boots Ennis a damn good argument over 12 rounds, just like Pacquiao did with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Doesn't the fact that the guy has moved through all those divisions, picking up a few losses along the way, no doubt, but fighting everyone, as Roy Jones said, when he should fight them, not aging them out, not waiting for them to get old or waiting for other people to beat them, but fighting them as and when. You pick up a few losses that way. Wouldn't that be a greater achievement if Inoue, went from light fly all the way to welterweight or junior welterweight and lost a close-ish competitive decision to Boots Ennis or Terence Crawford or something? Isn't that more impressive than someone who stays at, Floyd started at super feather. He won his first belt at super feather and dominated at welterweight. Which is more impressive? Because to me, if you fly through the weight divisions, in such astonishing results. I mean, I know De La Hoya was past his best, but when Pacquiao made him quit, that's an amazing result. I thought De La Hoya, he's too big for Pacquiao. Pacquiao's good. But, okay, De La Hoya was fighting at welterweight for the first time in years, probably drained himself to get down to that weight. And Manny looked brilliant. Again, we wonder how he looked brilliant, but these are astonishing achievements to beat up these guys who are naturally so much bigger than you. So you can make that argument that someone who starts off so small and goes all the way up, to a much, much, much higher weight, fighting everyone, ducking no one, picking up a few losses, but nevertheless winning far more than they lose, is greater than someone who, even though they retired undefeated, kind of navigated their way through their career in a far more cautious, crafty manner. You can make that argument. Now, that is not meant to be a slur against Floyd Mayweather Jr., who I think was a great fighter. I think a lot of the criticism he gets is because people don't like him as a person. I don't like him as a person either. I think he's a ghastly sort of example of greed and gluttony and fame being used as a sort of narcissist's, masturbation material. I think he's just, no one loves Floyd more than Floyd, But he was a great fighter. And Pacquiao, whose achievements I've just lauded, as I said earlier a couple of times, I'm very sceptical of how he went through those weights. But he wasn't nicked for PEDs. And there's no doubt that regardless of any PED use, he was a great fighter. So you have to weigh all these things up. But I think when Roy Jones said that Pacquiao had a better career than Floyd, a lot of people laughed. I mean, obviously the Floyd Mayweather fanboys, they'll laugh at anything. They won't hear a single thing said against their great, cult leader. Perish the thought. But I do think Roy had a point there about the sort of trajectory of the career of both these guys. One guy fighting anyone, anytime, any place. Another one fighting only when he chooses on his conditions. I mean, this is why I don't rate Vladimir Klitschko particularly highly as a heavyweight champion, apart from the fact that he was so crushingly dull, it was unbelievable to watch. Everything had to be weighted in his favour. And I think if you have that type of career, and I mentioned Sven Otka earlier, who another one who was unbelievably boring to watch. Again, another German-based fighter who had everything, including the judges, in his favour. You've got to weigh all these intangibles up and then come up with an objective but convincing, debatable argument. Of course, the art of debate in the modern age is if it's not dead, then it's certainly on life support, because so many people don't know how to debate. Any kind of criticism, you're a hater, or it's bullshit. People are idiots. Debate should be, you present an argument, you argue it as convincingly as you can, you accept the opposing view, but at the same time counter it with hopefully logic, reason and common sense, and then you have a mature adult discussion about who's right and who's wrong. And in a debating society, the audience will vote on who they consider has made their argument best. I think a sensible argument for both sides of the coin can be made when it comes to Floyd versus Pacquiao, who had the best career, who has the greater legacy, let's put it that way. But you may have your own opinions, I'm sure you do. Please leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And yes, thank you for watching the video, and please like it if you enjoyed this video. And please join us. Subscribe to the channel. Spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Come on, it makes sense. You're a good person, and it's your channel as much as mine, because as I've said before, if I'm making these videos and no one's listening, not a lot of point in me making them. It's just an echo chamber, and how boring is that? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy yourselves. I'll catch you later. Bye for now.